Thank you, brothers. Okay. Good morning, brothers and sisters. I'm Yen Fern here. And firstly, I'd like to thank you for having Derek and me back. You don't mind us coming back to share. And then, of course, for today, we will take a more interactive format. Okay. I was told by Len about a month ago that we would like some Sunday sessions to be a little bit more youth focused. And then I can understand that. And of course today we will realize that youth actually, in accordance to most of the time, we label it with 15 to 19, but we know that the National Youth Council actually extended youth from 15 to 35. Wow, which means we are all youth. And later on, Derek will share that sometimes in the Bible, youth extend to even 40s. So that makes all of us youth today. Okay? Yes. Okay, so so today we will learn from a youth. Okay, and this youth we will look at will be, let's go through King Solomon. Okay, let's move on. Okay, why King Solomon? Because King Solomon is alluded to become youth at the age of 20 years old. Okay, he reigned in Israel for 40 years. So he retired, quote unquote, as a king at the age of 60. So he spent most of his so-called, now our current definition of youth, as a king. All right. Yes. So today lessons will apply to everyone. But before we start, I would like you to log onto this because our interaction here will be E interaction. So you Google class point. Okay. Yes. Okay. Google class point. This is the word here. Then you will see this. Join a class. And the class code is this 55512. Okay, yes, 12. That's the class code. So today will be much more interactive. Yes, Google Class. Oh wow, Siri. Yes. Can 55512. No lah. No grading. No grading. Wow, no, it's competition counts. Yeah, no, I see 9 people, 11. Wow, okay. So we'll give you some time, okay? Because sometimes I felt that sometimes we sit there, we sponge in for half an hour, then after that we leave. I think it's good that this platform is shared with everybody, not just the one right in front sharing. Okay? Oh, okay. Wow, 25. Okay, we move on. But I realized that because I didn't pay for an account, maximum is 25. So it reaches red point. Thank you. Okay, so we move on. So this is the very first question, all right? Okay, before we learn about Solomon, we learn about his background. Okay, let's read. Sorry? I'm sorry, upset. Then after that, we rotate lah. You log out, somebody log in. Okay, share. 举手也可以. Okay, we start off with learning about Solomon's background. Okay, let's start off with 1 Kings chapter 4. All right, of course, I took up the key verses here. It says, God gave Solomon wisdom and very great insight and a breadth of understanding as measureless as the sand on the seashore. Solomon's wisdom was greater than the wisdom of all the people of the East and greater than all the wisdom of Egypt. He spoke 3,000 proverbs, and his songs were numbered 1,005. Wow. He spoke about plant life, from the cedar of Lebanon to the hyssop that grows out of the walls. Okay, hyssop has medicinal properties. He also spoke about the animals and birds, reptiles, and fish. From all nations, people came to listen to Solomon's wisdom, sent by all the kings of the world who had heard of his wisdom. The first question for the teens, okay, the younger youth, what academic studies do you think Solomon pursued? So I'll do a word cloud here. Okay, you have 30 seconds to collect responses. What do you think he pursued? Okay, you read many things that he done. Wow, botany and zoology. Okay. Older youth also can. Many youth can. Science, all right, good. That's all. He wrote a lot of proverbs. Out of war. Okay. 孙子兵法. Okay, biology. Okay, good. So 30 seconds are up. Yes. All right. So in short, yeah, you can tell that um, Solomon has known many things under the sun. Okay, he actually has studied many things. Okay, from what we all have gathered, life sciences, which is the current thing back then with the botany and zoology. He learned about agriculture, which is true. Literature, well done. He talks about the different perspectives of life. Oh yeah, he didn't about music teacher. Okay, he talked about science, okay, biology lah, and all these. So as such, you learn about Solomon. He has great knowledge. He possessed a lot of things beyond his age, and as such, many people comes to listen to him. So we stop here. We move on. So the next one will be for. So now let's look at Solomon exploits. Okay, so in First Kings chapter 5, okay, we go through about Solomon was asked to build the temple. He was given this by his father, which is David. It says that here, okay, when Hiram, king of Tyre, heard that Solomon had been anointed king to succeed his father, David, he sent his envoys to Solomon because he had always been on friendly terms with David. He said, then Solomon responded in this letter through his envoys, I intend, therefore, to build a temple for the name of the Lord my God, as the Lord told my father David, when he said, your son, whom I will put on the throne in your place, will build the temple for my name. So this is what Solomon said. He wants to build the temple for the name of the Lord. So what Hiram said was, I have received the message you sent to me and will do all you want in providing the cedar and the juniper logs. My men will hold them down from Lebanon to the Mediterranean Sea, and I will float them as raft by the sea to the place you specify. There I will separate them, and you can take them away. And you are to grant my wish by providing food for my royal household. Therefore, in the 11th year, in chapter 6, verse 38, in the month of Bul, the 8th month, the temple was finished in all its details according to its specification. Solomon had spent 7 years building it. So this is the time where Solomon was actually anointed. And of course, we live in a time where we're very fortunate. Those of you about 2 weeks ago on 6th of May, if you do tune in, we get to watch King Charles III coronation, okay, on London on 6th of May. Okay, and it's about, at that point of time, many royalties, prominent politicians from UK, Commonwealth of Nations, foreign royalty, head of states, head of government attended with a very symbolic and elaborate ceremony since 60 years ago, about 1953. Of course, for us, President Halimah Yacob represented Singapore. Okay, so in a similar fashion, okay, King Solomon was anointed king. At the point of time, Israel was a dominant power in the region, more or less, because David has conquered the surrounding lands. All right, and when Hiram, king of Tyre, heard that Solomon was anointed king, he sent envoys to King Solomon with his good wishes. Solomon wrote back to Hiram with this desire to build the Lord's temple, and he is the one who proposed a trade relation between the two countries, Tyre and Jerusalem, where Tyre will log the forest, send cedars and junipers by the sea, while Jerusalem will provide food for the royal household, barley, wheat, olive oil. And why am I going through all this? Because before we talk about what Solomon has learned through his life, let's look at his life. Because many times we look at somebody, what they wrote in silo, we realize, this is, everybody goes through that. But if you look at his life, you will realize actually Solomon has achieved a lot. So you realize from here, not just that he has the breadth of knowledge that is surpassed many people, he also has actually started trade relations, something that is quite remarkable for his time. He actually started this relationship between Tyre, king of Hiram. Hiram, king of Tyre. Yes. I'll move on now. So after Solomon finished building the temple in 7 years, his next exploit was to build his palace. Okay, so this is the one where he embarked on the project to build his palace. So it says over here in 1 Kings 7, it took Solomon 13 years, however, to complete the construction of his palace. He built the palace of the forest of Lebanon, 100 cubits long, 50 wide, and 30 high, with 4 rows of cedar columns supporting trimmed cedar beams. He also built the throne hall, the hall of justice, where he was to judge, and he covered it with cedar from floor to ceiling, and the palace in which he was to live sat further back. It was similar in design. Solomon also made a palace like this hall for Pharaoh's daughter, whom he had married. When all the work King Solomon had done for the temple of the Lord has finished, he brought in the things his father David has dedicated, the silver and gold and the furnishings, and he placed them in the treasuries of the Lord. So, you're right, this is the next. He spent 13 years building it. The next picture will illustrate his urban development. So this is the entire place which he had. So take a look at the right. This is the temple which he actually built, okay, for God. There is the courtyard where, the last time around we talked about how the different animals were sacrificed. And subsequently, we take a look at the other side. This is his entire palace, about more than twice the size of the temple of the Lord. Okay? He built a throne hall here, porch of the throne, where he actually judged cases. Okay? He also had was the forest of Lebanon, which houses here, all right, the armory and the treasury within the palace, his sleep quarters, which is here, and not forgetting a house for Pharaoh's daughter. If history has it that because Pharaoh's daughter is from Egypt, that's why he wants to give Pharaoh's daughter places for her to worship his Lord, her God in that sense. Okay, so therefore it's further away from the temple. So that's what tradition has mentioned. So therefore it was the way it is situated. All right. So we move on to the next part about Solomon exploits. All right. Solomon started international trade. So we've learned earlier on, okay, that we've taken a look here. In the red portion is where the territory of Israel before David became king, which is under Saul. The orange is where the area conquered by David and inherited by Solomon. And the last part here, the area where it's under strong economic influence of Solomon. So if we take a look further, he has started here the trade between Tyre and himself, okay, where he will get cedars and junipers and gold, which are wood from Tyre, and he'll provide them with food. Moving on, he actually set a port in Ezion Jebel where actually gold was brought in. So that's where gold became such a silver became something which is completely worthless. I won't say worthless, not of much value. Gold is of much value. Moving on, then of course we talk about the Queen of Sheba, who heard about his fame, and arriving with it, she brought camels carrying spice, large quantities of gold, and gems. So Queen of Sheba coming in from Arabia. They're not forgetting Solomon imported horses and chariots from Egypt, top horses and chariots, and he had trading ships, which is the gold, silver, ivory, exotic animals. Okay, once in 3 years he come back. So in short, you can take a look. Solomon had many things going for him. He had the greatest wisdom, number one. Of course, he actually amassed great amass of wealth. Not forgetting, he has built God's temple. He has built his own palace, very lofty place, upgraded from the tent all the way to that like a condo, something to just like. We move on. So the final part. Solomon last exploit was, his wives. King Solomon, however, loved many foreign women besides Pharaoh's daughter, the Moabites, here, the Ammonites, Edomites, all right, Sidonites, and Hittites. So he had a lot of political marriages. They were from nations about which the Lord had told the Israelites, you must not intermarry with them, because they will surely turn your hearts after their gods. Nevertheless, Solomon held fast to them in love. He had 700 wives of royal birth, 300 concubines, and his wife led him astray. As Solomon grew old, his wife turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not fully devoted to the Lord his God, as the heart of David his father had been. He followed Ashereth, goddess of Sidonites, the Molech, the detestable god of the Ammonites. So Solomon did evil in the eyes of the Lord. He did not follow the Lord completely, as David his father had done. So from here, we examine Solomon's life. A very, very illustrious life. One of the greatest king. So now let me ask you, if you manage to achieve all these exploits at 40 years old, which he did at 40, what would you do next? I will start that. You want to think first before I start the timer? Ready? 1, 2, go. What would you do next? Wow, sleep. Wow, retire. Stop working, travel the world, buy US real estate. Wow. Okay. Any others? 98 seconds left. Get right with God here. Live my life in a comfortable luxury and find happiness. Maybe with God and with family and God. Thanks, Sarah. Okay. Look for more exploits. Danny. Okay. John, look for new adventures. Any others? Okay, yeah? Okay, so yes. I take it as this is what it is. All right, so yeah, I love your candid responses. Many of us just want to sleep and retire, which is, I completely agree. For me, I want to travel the world. Of course, if my legs can still take me around. Lah. At 40 years old, can now. Okay, so we finish this. Huh? Okay, thank you for your response. So this comes to the part where Solomon share his learnings. Okay, so we move on. Trace the learnings of Solomon. What is his response? Okay, a bit more interesting. Okay, yes. Solomon mentioned after all his exploits, he said about the vanity of wisdom and knowledge. Very interesting because many times when I read Ecclesiastes on his own, okay, you don't background it with what he did. You roughly know, but when you read about what he actually did, the progress, the amount of so-called, I won't say civilization, the progression that he did to his nation, and to contrast it with the response, you see the stark difference in terms of what actually matters at the end of the day. Okay, he said, firstly, yeah, this one I take from the Living Bible. Okay, I like it because it is more contemporary in its speech, like that we can relate to. It says, history merely repeats itself. All right, nothing is truly new. It has all been done or said before. I, the preacher, was king of Israel, living in Jerusalem, and I applied myself to search for understanding about everything in the universe. I discovered that the lot of man which God has dealt to him is not a happy one. It is all foolishness, chasing the wind. What is wrong cannot be righted. It is water over the dam, and there's no use thinking of what might have been. Okay? The preacher mentioned that history merely repeats itself because life is a repetitive cycle. All right? Whenever whatever we see or hear has already been done and gone, covered by the sense of time, will start all over again. Even if wrongs were done, it is still water under the bridge. Too late for anything to rectify, to be done, because what is done is done. Hence, what Solomon did was he tried to be a much more educated king. He says, I said to myself, look, I'm better educated than any of the kings before me in Jerusalem. I have greater wisdom and knowledge. So I work hard to be wise instead of foolish. But now I realize that even this was like chasing the wind. For the more my wisdom, the more my grief. To increased knowledge only increases distress. So Solomon realized that with more knowledge, there's more grief and vexation, as too much knowledge without action leads to being overwhelmed, discouraged, and misdirection. You know so much, you can't do anything about it anyway. So what's the point? You get tired, it gets really meaningless. Okay? So next, Solomon did. He began to study of the comparative virtues of wisdom and folly, which is true, which is good, and anyone else will come to the same conclusion I did, that wisdom is of much more value than foolishness, just as light is better than darkness. For the wise man sees while the fool is blind. And yet I noticed there was one thing that happened to wise and foolish alike. Just as the fool will die, so will I. So of what value is all my wisdom? Then I realized that even wisdom is futile, for the wise and fool both die, and in the days to come, both will be long forgotten. So, of course, he says right at the end, it's better to be wise than foolish, but yet at the end, death awaits all of us. So what is the point? Okay, let's move on to what he does next. We compare it with his exploits. He had public service. All of us are, those of us are public servants, right? We try our best to help the public in whatever ways we are, okay? So, this one refers to teachers, police, etc. Yes. All right, so he looked at them, he says here, all right, in Ecclesiastes chapter 2, it says, then I tried to find fulfillment by inaugurating a great public work program, homes, vineyards, garden, parks, and orchard for myself, and reservoirs to hold the water to irrigate my plantation. Next, I bought slaves, both men and women, and others were born within my household. I also bred great herds and flocks, more than any of the kings before me. I collected silver and gold as taxes from many kings and provinces. In the cultural arts, I organized men's and women's choirs and orchestras. So you could see that actually Solomon did a lot of progression. And I'm disgusted about this, that I must leave the fruits of all my hard work to others. And who can tell whether my son will be a wise man or a fool? And yet all I have will be given to him. How discouraging. Okay? So Solomon took urban development, he bred herds and flocks, agriculture, started the art scene of having choirs and orchestra. He realized that no matter what agricultural, economic, or cultural progression he made, he had to leave the fruits of his labor to others. Likewise, like all of us at our work. No matter how hard we try to do, once we quit the job, somebody else took it over. Right? No matter what, yeah. And our existence will soon be forgotten. All right. So what he did next was he decided, therefore, let's take a look short-sighted, not so long. Okay. Let's not think about leaving a legacy. Yeah. Let's talk about being satisfied with the fruits of my labor. He went on by saying here, so I turned in despair from hard work as the answer to search for satisfaction. For though I spend my life searching for wisdom, knowledge, and skill, I must leave it all to someone who hasn't done a day's work in his life, inherits all of my efforts free of charge. This is not only foolish but unfair. So what does a man get for all his hard work? Days full of sorrow and grief and restless, bitter nights. It is all utterly ridiculous. Yes, he tried to look at satisfaction. Beyond the short spurge of endorphin, he realized that it also comes with lots of restless nights, stay up the night, do a lot of things, right? A lot of sorrow and a lot of grief. And he says that life is unfair. Because whatever he did, he built, he has to leave it to somebody else after that. All right. So next, this final thing that he did was this. He said, now let's look beyond just, living a legacy, look beyond being satisfied, the endorphin rush. Let's look at vanity. Let's look at, say, laughter and pleasure. He said, I said to myself, come now, be merry. Enjoy yourself to the full. But I found that this too was futile, for it is silly to be laughing all the time. What good does it do? So after a lot of thinking, I decided to try the road of the drink, okay, while still holding steadily to my course of seeking wisdom. Then next, I changed my course again and followed the path of folly so that I could experience the only happiness most men have throughout their lives. And there were my many beautiful concubines. So I became greater than any of the kings in Jerusalem before me, and with it, all I remained clear-eyed so that I could evaluate all the things. Anything I wanted, I took, did not restrain myself from any joy. I even found great pleasure in hard work. This pleasure was indeed my only reward for all my labor. But as I look at everything I tried, it is all useless, a chasing after the wind, and there was nothing really worthwhile there. Okay? So yes, finally, Solomon tried merriment and pleasure. He enjoyed himself to the full. He denied himself nothing that is pleasurable. He made ungodly choices from drinking to women. So Solomon mentioned in the Bible 38 times the word havel, a chasing after the wind. So what is havel? Okay, havel, like what it says over here, it's not meaningless. It's about a chasing after the wind. It's like a mirage, okay, where it makes you think that there is an oasis at the end of the journey, but it disappears when you reach there. That is life. We work hard. Many times when we are young, we think we work hard. Next time, guess what? We have an easier life. Teens, what do you all think? Your parents show you that? No. We all went through that, right? That's what my parents told me. You work hard. When you grow older, guess what? You have an easier life. I realized to my horror, that is not true. My life continues to be hard. Okay? Then, all right, then of course, it's like a smoke that appears solid, but when you try to grab onto it, it disappears. Life is temporary, life is fleeting. Or it's like, finally, like a fog, like right now, in the middle of uncertainties. You don't know the way, you don't know where to go, but you're just trying to grasp in the fog. So that is life. In fact, wisdom, pleasures, work, possessions are very often the bubble we live in to insulate ourselves from reality. So it's time to burst the reality. So what is the verdict Solomon had? Let's live life backwards. What does it mean? Okay, now, if you're a test taker, take a test, right? What will be your vantage point of taking the test? So if I want to do well, I'll take the test, not from the vantage point, not as a test taker, but as a test marker. What does the marker want from this? Then I'll write my test answers accordingly. Then I'll do well, right? So if you go for your interview, what's the vantage point? What does your interviewer wants from this? Then, okay, as an interviewee, therefore, I will therefore know what to say to land myself the job. So likewise, Ecclesiastes teach us to look at the world from a different standpoint. Not a youth from the standpoint of the youth, but stand with the old and look at the youth with the vantage point. Okay? Use the perspective of death to think about life. At my deathbed, at my death, what I want is where I will view life. Okay? Use the perspective of life above the sun to look at life under the sun. Life under the sun is just repetitive. The day comes, the night comes, but what does the one above the sun want the life under the sun? Okay? So that is called live life backwards. Okay, I move on now. So Ecclesiastes 12 summarize it all in a very succinct manner. It is, as all of us youth, okay, living life backwards is who's above the sun? Our God. What does He want from those people under the sun? A relationship with Him. When we are deathbed, what do we want? We will see God. So therefore, looking at it, what's the vantage point for the youth? Let's start a relationship with God. So it says, 12 verse 1 says, don't let the excitement of being young cause you to forget about your Creator. Honor Him in your youth. Before the evil years come, you no longer enjoy living. It will be too late then to try to remember Him when the sun and light and the moon and stars are dim to your old eyes. Now, most of us, I don't know about your age, I can't look words very carefully. You have 老花, so you must take out your glasses and then you see. The way to make sure that you appear still young is you make sure that, you have progressive lens so that you don't take out your lenses to see. Yeah. When your eyes that are dim in your old eyes, and there is no silver lining left among the clouds. For there will come a time when your limbs will tremble with age, your strong legs will become weak, your teeth will be too few to do their work, and there'll be blindness too. Then your lips be tightly closed while eating when your teeth are gone. You don't want them to come out, right? And you'll be wakened at dawn with the first note of the birds. But you find yourself will be deaf, tuneless, and quavering voiced. You will realize certain decibels you cannot hear anymore as you age. Okay, so it comes with age. All right, so moving on now. So yes, remember your Creator while you are young, before the silver cord of life snaps and the gold bowl is broken, before the pitcher is broken at the fountain and the wheel is broken at the cistern. Then the dust returns to the earth as it was, and the spirit returns to God who gave it. But my son, we won. There is no end of opinions ready to be expressed. Studying them will go on forever and become very exhausting. Here's my final conclusion. Fear God, obey His commandments, for this is the entire duty of man, for God will judge us for everything we do, including everything good or bad. So in short, we can talk about multiple theses, okay? Some people will talk about there is atheist, there's no God. Many people have very different views. It will come to no end. But at the end of the day, it is to fear God and obey His commandments. God will actually judge everything we do and everything good, hidden or bad. So I wanted to share about myself. I came to a revelation with God at 15, very young, okay? What propelled me then was the drudgery of study, exam, and expectations. Okay, the excitement at 15 years old was very little, like the temporary endorphin rush with new experiences, the pride of being good at certain things. You're being selected for the prefect, you're being in the top, you went to the top class, you represented school. So these are the level of excitement then, only at 15 years old. Okay, at a point of time, after going through these repeated cycles, I felt really breathless, tired, not being able to stop as I was pushed by expectations and circumstances. So having a relationship with God helps me to own these experiences and not feel pushed by people's expectations. Okay? So now I've been a Christian for 30 years. Okay, which is like I'm teen 15, so you can roughly guess my age, huh? Okay, 30 plus lah, huh? So sometimes when things like this, you round down, you don't round up quite a bit. Okay, I come to embrace a few things. Okay, I come to embrace that I do not know how to predict the future, as the race is not always for the swift. Many times I thought I got this packed down, I can get it, I can ace it, come out, I fail. You know what I mean? Many times I thought I'm not prepared. I come out, not bad, I got it. It's not always for the swift. I do not know the work of God who make everything. I do not know why after 30 years in the church, things have changed. So I do not know. And I don't want to profess to know because that is the working of God. I do not know how to guarantee success and avoid failure. I can try, but there is no guarantee. And I also learned finally, wise living means sitting loose of life and its possessions. Laugh at yourself. Be ready to share and give away. Because why? You never know when it comes back. Wise living means that neither success nor failure is final. It's not the end. There's always more to come. And wise living is on its own reward. So finally, love God, obey His commandments, and enjoy your life. That is Ecclesiastes. Thank you. And Derek will continue on to share about another youth. But yes, and lead on to communion. Can I? Thank you.
All right. As I was preparing communion, I was thinking about Yen Fern's lesson. So I titled my part of the lesson "The Story of a Couple Other Youths in the Bible." So when you talk about youth in the New Testament, okay, the person Timothy comes to mind. Okay, and that was true for me as well. Okay, so according to tradition, okay, so let's take a look at Timothy. Timothy became a Christian when he was very young. Okay, this was mentioned a couple of times in the Bible. Okay, he was raised in a household of devout Christians. His mother and grandmother, okay, his mother and grandmother were Christians. Okay, and basically why we consider Timothy, or our impression of Timothy, is a young man, because it's probably because of First Timothy in 4:12, where Paul wrote to him that says, "Don't let anybody look down on you because you are young, but set example for the believers in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and purity." So what is interesting to me when I look at Timothy, okay, in relation to today's lesson is, okay, traditionally Timothy is believed to have converted or got to know God at the age of 16, maybe to 20, depending on what account you look at. Okay. And when Timothy met Paul, he was really young. Okay. Timothy was probably around the age of 20 to 24. He followed Paul on his missionary journeys, a journey that spans about 14 years with some breaks in between. So when the book of First Timothy was written by Paul and sent to Timothy himself, this was before Paul's second imprisonment, and Timothy is most likely to be in his early 30s or mid 30s, depending on where you start. And by the time Second Timothy was written, Timothy was probably closer to 40. Okay, two insights I got from this, like Yen Fern mentioned. Okay, the good news is, judging from the New Testament standard, okay, and the average age of the people in this room, we are all considered young. Yeah. Okay. So I'm not sure how solid that theological grounding is, but that's my stand, and that's what I'm going to adopt from now on. Okay. Now, the second insight that I've got from this is rather interesting. Okay. Now, this is in 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 22. Okay. So at this time, Timothy was about 35 to 40. And Paul wrote to Timothy. In this verse, it says, "Flee the evil desires of youth." Okay. In other translations, it says, "Flee, run away from youthful lusts." Okay, let me read the whole verse in the NIV translation. It says, "Flee the evil desires of youth and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace, along with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart. Okay? And basically, I find it interesting that at the age of 35 to 40, Paul's advice to Timothy is flee the evil desires of youth. Okay? And what is the desire of youth? Here, as I read in many translations, it clearly is not only referring to physical attraction or sexual immorality, it's referring to many things. And one of the definitions that I like is this: not only all the irregular and sensual desires, but pride, ambition, and above all, the lust of power, to which most men will sacrifice a lot, their ease, their pleasure, their health, just to pursue power. And if you read on later in 2 Timothy chapter 3, okay, if you read it together with chapter 2, then it says, then this verse makes a lot more sense. It says, but mark this, there will be terrible times in the last days. People will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boastful, proud, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, without love, unforgiving, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not lovers of the good, treacherous, rash, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness, but denying its power. Have nothing to do with such people. When you read chapter 2 and chapter 3 together without the chapter break, okay, flee the evil desires of youth makes a lot more sense. So, like Timothy and like Solomon and like my wife, I was also baptized as a teen. I became a Christian at the age of 18. Now, my teenage life is rather unusual because some background context about myself. I am the eldest son in my family. I am also the eldest grandson in my clan. Okay? And my family is a very traditional Chinese family. And on top of that, they have a rather successful family business. So when I was born, okay, I am supposed to be the future successor of everything, the one that, everybody's going to leave everything to, like my wife said. Okay? So my teenage years, when I was 12, I remembered, okay, not having fun with my friends, but I was brought to a business meeting by my dad among his peers. Okay, and I was introduced to all these uncles that are, running other businesses and expected to behave, okay, at that level, talking about business, talking about how to make money, learning business insights from all these seniors. And to me, initially, it was kind of like, hey, I'm supposed to be, having fun in school. Why am I doing this? Then the traditions of family expectations and being the eldest of everything kind of, made me stay there. But I didn't enjoy it. Okay, I rather thought that, okay, I know this is what most people would like. Okay, I know not everybody can have this, but I really didn't enjoy it. Okay, and I think one of the reasons God uh, probably called me to be a Christian at 18 after experiencing all this is, okay, because I remember from 18 to 21, okay, although I was serving NS, I was put in the teens ministry. And God kind of gave me 3 years of life back, to enjoy my life as a teen. Okay, so I had a lot of fun in the first 3 years of my life as a Christian. Now, and the first 3 years was good. I loved God. I was very devoted to God, and I really gave it my all. And then came the time where I go to the university in campus. Okay. Now, this is where a few things became very evident. Okay, now I'm looking back. One, my worldly ambition has never died. It just took a backseat. Okay, I wanted to do well in school. I wanted to be successful. I wanted first class honors. Okay, now, of course, as most of you know, my ability didn't quite catch up then. So I failed a year, repeated NUS for a year. And that was, as I shared many times, a very defining moment in my life because before that, never failed. Okay, never. Never fallen so bad, never had had an obstacle that's so bad. Now, at that time, it was a big deal because, hey, I'm supposed to be this successful and, very rather above average intelligent guy, and I failed first year, okay? About to be kicked out of school. By the grace of God, I was not kicked out of school, okay? And of course, much later on, as I see, actually never study lah. That's why I failed. Okay, so and as I advance to many years ahead, now that I'm slightly older but still young, okay, I come to another point of my life where there's another defining moment for me. Okay, as you know, recent events has been talked about many times, so I will not repeat them. But for me, the recent events, what it brought about in my life was renewal. Okay, one of the things that came to me is like, okay, how much of what I believe all these years, how much of what I thought was right all these years is actually true? Okay, and I realized that in this past 20 years or so, after I've graduated from campus, I was actually lazy to think. Okay, I took a lot of things around me for granted. I thought this is supposed to be the way it is. We have always done it this way, so why change it? We have always pursued the formula for success in career, in our lives, in our spiritual lives. Okay, so why change it at all? It's supposed to be this way. If you don't agree with it, there's something wrong with you. And that more and more to me these days has come into focus. I realize that despite what I believe, I'm not a very deep thinker. Okay, despite what I like to think of myself, my intelligence actually not quite there. Okay, and I began to think a lot about my life, and I really enjoy this point of renewal because uh, I began to look at things in a very different light. I began to look at God's word in a very different light. I began to look at things a lot more deeper than I would have. Okay, and this is a very good point in my life, at least, to see what is to go on. So as I prepared this communion and also this extended point from Yen Fern's lesson, okay, I began to look into the Bible for advice. Okay, some practical advice on what to do, on what to reflect at this point of my life. And the advice is given to us here in 2 Timothy chapter 2, 8 to 13. And I read it for you. Remember Jesus Christ, raised from the dead, descended from David. This is my gospel for which I'm suffering even to the point of being chained like a criminal. But God's words is not chained. Therefore, I endure everything for the sake of the elect, and they too may obtain the salvation that is in Christ Jesus with eternal glory. Here is a trustworthy saying. If we die with him, we will also live with him. If we endure, we will also reign with him. If we disown him, he will also disown us. If we are faithless, he remains faithful, for he cannot disown himself. Keep reminding God's people of these things. Warn them before God against quarreling about words. It is of no value and only ruins those who listens. Do your best to present yourself to God as one approved, a worker who does not need to be ashamed and who correctly handles the word of truth. Avoid godless chatter because those who indulge in it will become more and more ungodly. Their teaching will spread like gangrene. Among them are Hymenaeus and Philetus, who have departed from the truth. They said the resurrection has already taken place and they have destroyed the faith of some. Nevertheless, God's solid foundation stands firm, sealed with this inscription: the Lord knows those who are his, and everyone who confesses the name of the Lord must turn away from wickedness. As we take communion today, let us meditate on this verse and this advice that Paul wrote to Timothy, and now the Bible writes to us. Okay, one of the things that I've adopted, okay, maybe because of vanity or maybe because of this new insight I have, is I will no longer call myself an old Christian because one, the Bible says I'm young, so I'm going with that, and I think for me at least, calling myself an old Christian actually impedes me from learning more about the Word of God. I'm not old, not by the Bible standard, not by how Paul looked at Timothy. Okay, I am not any wiser than Solomon. I'm not any more mature and devout as Timothy. Okay? And I think the label old Christian, even though I've been a Christian for 30 over years, is it now hinders me more than it helps me. So I hope it is my prayer that I would approach life now with new eyes, with new insight, okay, and a new perspective of God and His Word. And I hope you do the same. So, to conclude and to borrow a verse from Ecclesiastes as well, let me read this again. Remember your Creator in the days of your youth, before the days of trouble comes, and the years approach where you will say, I find no pleasure in them. Now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep His commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it is good or evil. Okay? So, brothers and sisters, let us remember why we are living this life, how we should look at life from now on. And I hope that this sharing, my wife's lesson and my sharing, renews your youth inside, if not outside, and helps you with a new perspective in what we face now. Okay, let us pray now for the bread and the wine. God, we thank you so much for what you have done for us. We thank you so much for Jesus Christ that, died for us and has always made starting anew possible for every one of us sinners who have stumbled, who have, gone through many lives, challenges, and, never fails to help us ponder and reflect on how we can go forward with hope, with positivity. God, we thank you so much that it is Christ's death that enables us to do this, and help us, remember Him as we should, as you commanded in the Bible. As we take the bread and drink the wine today, help us also get a new perspective, or get a deeper perspective of your word and what you want us to do with our lives. God, I know I've always grumbled about being old, and I shall stop that for now. God, just really thank you for this time we can share our thoughts, and also thank you for this time we can reflect again on our lives and start anew this week. God, we thank you. I pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.